Hey everyone, welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're plunging into one of the most vibrant, diverse, and honestly, most vulnerable ecosystems on our entire planet. Yep, we're talking about coral reefs. So let's just dive right in and figure out exactly what's going on beneath the waves, and more importantly, how we can fix it.
First off, let's start with a really big question. Why on earth are the ocean's most vibrant, colorful ecosystems suddenly turning stark, ghost white? To figure this out, we're going to treat this explainer kind of like a medical diagnosis. We've got a patient, our coral reefs, and they're showing some seriously alarming symptoms. To prescribe the right treatment, we need to know exactly what's happening down at the cellular level.
So Section 1, what exactly is coral bleaching? Let's look at the biological mechanism behind these white reefs. At its core, coral bleaching is basically a microscopic eviction. Seriously, think of the coral and its symbiotic algae like roommates. The coral provides the physical house, the structure, and the algae pays rent by providing energy and those amazing vibrant colors. But when the environment gets a little too stressful, the coral kind of panics and just evicts its roommate. It kicks the algae right out. And without that algae, the coral loses its main food source and all its color, which leaves the tissue looking completely pale or just stark white. Okay, so here's how that eviction actually plays out. It always starts with some kind of severe environmental stress. That stress forces the coral to expel its algae roommate. And without the algae, like we said, the coral tissue turns pale or white. Now, here is a really crucial takeaway. Bleaching does not mean the coral is immediately dead. It's more like a severe state of shock. If the stress goes away, the algae can actually come back. But if that stress persists, that's when the risk of starvation becomes a really tragic reality. Which brings us to Section 2, the 4 main causes. It's time to diagnose the specific stressors that are harming these reefs. All right, so there are 4 major culprits behind all this stress. Number 1, and the most urgent by far, is rising sea temperatures, specifically acute marine heat waves. But, it's not just about how hot the water gets. The duration of that heat is just as important. If a heat wave lasts too long, the coral literally doesn't have the time to get its algae back. Then you've got water quality problems, things like nutrient pollution and agricultural runoff. And finally, other stressors like physical damage from boats or storms, and the slow, invisible danger of ocean acidification. To really grasp the danger here, we need to compare acute stress with chronic stress. Acute stress is that sudden, massive spike, like a marine heat wave making the temperature shoot up out of nowhere. Chronic stress, on the other hand, is the ongoing, everyday stuff like sewage and polluted runoff. You can think of chronic pollution as something that constantly wears down the reef's immune system over time. So by the time that acute heat wave finally hits, the coral is already completely exhausted, making it way more likely to bleach. Let's move on to Section 3, why bleaching matters. Here is the ecosystem-wide prognosis. Look, the consequences of this bleaching are just devastating. A healthy, thriving reef supports an abundance of fish, acts as a massive natural barrier against rough waves, and sustains the fisheries that coastal communities completely rely on. But when a reef bleaches and dies, that entire balance just collapses. We're talking about a massive loss of habitat and food for marine life. Those vital storm barriers weaken, leaving coastlines totally exposed to erosion. And economically, it leads directly to smaller fish catches, which hits the livelihoods and tourism of local communities incredibly hard. All of this triggers what scientists call the vicious cycle. Basically, damaged reefs just have fewer defenses against the next heat wave. It's a compounding danger. As heat waves become more and more frequent, the coral's window to recover gets smaller and smaller. Reefs caught in this cycle face a much, much harder path to recovery. And in areas getting hit repeatedly by high temps, they actually risk a permanent shift, transforming from vibrant coral ecosystems into systems completely dominated by algae. All right, Section 4, global and local solutions. Let's prescribe the treatment plan. Preventing this bleaching requires a very specific, 2-pronged approach. On one side, global action is absolutely our biggest lever. We have got to cut greenhouse gas emissions to cool the planet's oceans down. Seriously, this is the only way to address the absolute root cause of large-scale thermal stress and give the reefs a fighting chance to recover. But on the other side, we also need aggressive local action. Even while the planet is warming, reefs actually respond so much better when we minimize additional local pressures. So improving water quality, managing local fishing, managing tourism, that boosts the reef's resilience right now, today. And the good news? These local actions are totally doable. We can clean up the environment by cutting back on nutrient runoff and wastewater. We can protect herbivore fish because they naturally eat the harmful algae that tries to take over after a bleaching event. We can also enforce reef-safe tourism, like using mooring buoys so boat anchors don't literally smash the coral. Plus, there are amazing initiatives out there actively restoring damaged habitats through things like coral gardening. Minimizing these secondary threats absolutely skyrockets a reef's odds of bouncing back, even when the water gets warm.
Technology is also playing a huge role in this fight. Some regions are getting super proactive by using early warning systems that monitor heat forecasts right from space using satellites. When severe thermal stress is predicted, they can immediately trigger temporary emergency measures. They might tighten local protections, restrict certain water activities, or even temporarily close off highly stressed areas just to give the coral the absolute best chance of surviving the heat wave. It's just a really smart, data-driven approach to saving the reefs.
Ultimately, the ocean is trying to send us a message here. Coral bleaching is a loud, clear warning signal about ocean health and climate change. It is quite literally the canary in the coal mine for our seas. When these massive reefs turn stark white, the ocean is telling us that it is under severe distress. And honestly, we really need to listen.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. How can we balance urgent global emissions reductions with targeted local management to preserve these vital ecosystems for the future? Because at the end of the day, protecting reefs isn't just about saving some beautiful underwater scenery. It's about preserving the invaluable, life-sustaining services they provide for our entire planet. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking great questions, and I'll catch you next time.